Hey everyone, welcome to Princess Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with Season 1, Episode 6. I don't know why I specified Season 1, but there you go. Of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Yeah. I keep saying it pretty much every time, but this series is just impressing the hell out of me. It's so fun, it's so entertaining, it's got that superhero swag, but at the same time, is also something different. It focuses a lot more on the characters, the life lessons that they learn, the growth that they experience, and the culture that they come from. And as I've said before, this is going to be important to a lot of people out there, a lot of kids who have started to have more representation in the recent years, but that this is still going to mean a lot for. Because while there's been more representation for people of color in various cartoons and movies and stuff, televised cartoons still usually don't get this deep with the culture aspect. Like with last episode, we had just a big dive into like black hair and everything, especially regarding black girls, and how culture oftentimes views their hair and everything in a more negative light, but that it's just blatantly wrong to do that for multiple reasons. It's like, this is the kind of stuff that we need more of. And like, even as a white person myself, it's like I strongly advocate for stuff like this because it's not just about me. I'm white. I've had so much representation in media for so long. It's like I'm fine with not just sharing that, but giving it up for a while. I want to continue to see other races represented here, other cultures. And I'm obviously still fighting for queer representation. As a queer person, that's more of something I can still fight for. But this show's doing that too, because Casey has two dads, and there's even some background characters who are implied to be queer, or even straight up said to be. Like, there's a character in Lunella's class that uses they, them pronouns. There's another person who has a trans sticker on their water bottle. It's like, there is representation, and it's very casually inserted into this series. And I've talked before about how that's good. Like, it's great to see characters going through these kind of struggles for being seen, but it's also great to see them just accepted, just part of the world. That's awesome. I love to see them just given that kind of normalcy. And hopefully we'll have that more with the cultural representation and racial representation as well, where they don't need to make this deal out of it, where they don't need to make a statement with it one day, where it just is, where we have main characters of color who just are, who just exist, and get to live their culture, get to live their lives and their stories without needing to say something about it. Unfortunately, the world is not quite that nice yet, because there are just terrible people everywhere. But one day, hopefully, we'll get closer, at least, to that being a reality. The point is, this show's doing excellent at not only its representation, but its themes and core ideas that it's teaching to children, and even adults who watch this. And not to mention, it's just fun. It's fun, it's entertaining, it's funny. The characters are super likable. I'm very excited to see what happens next. And I'm really kind of hoping, but not holding my breath, for maybe more of a notable crossover of sorts with notable Marvel heroes or villains, even. I feel most of this is still going to be its own thing, and they've mentioned the Avengers. But I would like to see, like, even if it's just something kind of in like the background or even in the foreground to some degree, but not part of the main story. Like maybe someone's reading a newspaper and like Spider-Man's on the cover, or maybe they're reading the Daily Bugle, for example. It's like that would be fun. That would be a fun little nod. Something like that. Uh, maybe someone's listening to the radio and you briefly hear them, and they're like switching through stations, and you briefly hear like J. Jonah Jameson. Stuff like that. I know I'm defaulting to Spider-Man stuff as an example, but let's be honest. Spider-Man's my favorite Marvel hero, and the one I know the most about. But maybe there's like a news story about the X-Men or something. You get the gist. They could very easily just insert something like that, and it would feel natural because it takes place within the same canon world. To have these other heroes. So I'm hoping that maybe we'll get something, even if it's not like major part of the story, which I don't expect it to be. Just having something just subtly shown or heard would be excellent. Dude. But yeah. Otherwise, I don't really know what to expect going forward. I'm hoping we get just some great stuff. So, we're going to get this started, hope for the best. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. This was good. This is what I wanted to see from this, because this is very clearly going to be an ongoing plot point in the series. It's very clear that the Beyonder will continue to be watching, probably continue to give narration on all the other villains we see and everything. And he's definitely going to be back, like actively back at some point. And while he kind of comes across like at least a little bit like a main antagonist, I don't see him as evil. Like, is that just me? He doesn't come across as evil to me. He kind of comes across as, like, this is basically, like, his job, in a way. He's, like, this intergalactic space god, practically. And not, like, Thor in the MCU. But, you know, like, actually a god. Because let's be honest, Thor in the MCU, not actually a god. Let's be honest here. They really cut back on Thor in the MCU movies, and also on the quality of his movies. But yeah, the Beyonder is actually godlike, and he has the power to erase humanity. Like, basically with the snap of his fingers. I believe that. And we basically saw at least the start of that here. And the only reason he kind of took it back is because he kept to his deal, basically. Even though they didn't win, it's like he was proven to that they were worth surviving. They were worth keeping around. So, yeah. But he doesn't come across as evil. He comes across as more mischievous. Like a like a prankster, a troll, rather than an actual villain, per se. But he's also very unpredictable. You never know what he's going to do. And it's very hard to tell, like, where he could go at any point, or what he's going to do at any point. Because it's like, his main motivation, clearly, is to learn about humanity, to learn about their value, their intricacies, their unique nature compared to, I guess, his race and other races that he's dealt with in the past. And he wants to just know everything he can, and believes, I don't entirely know why, but he believes that reaching out to the smartest person, which is interesting that he claims Lunella is the smartest person, which I kind of doubt. And that actually brings up something interesting I'll get to in a second here. But he claims that going to the smartest person will help him learn about humanity. But if Lunella isn't actually the smartest person, that kind of implies to me that the Beyonder has another goal here that we don't know about. That he has some kind of secret motivation that's there as well. Because I don't think Lunella's the smartest person. Like, she's exceptionally smart. That's part of her character. But, like, when you have the likes of Riri Williams, Tony Stark, Shuri of Wakanda, speaking of Wakanda, it's like, do you really think that Lunella's the smartest person? Because based on what we've seen in this series, I very much do not. I think everything that she did in this, that she's done in this series so far, Shuri could have easily done as well. And more. I think that there's no real evidence to say that she's actually the smartest person on Earth. In fact, I think it's pretty clear she's not. So, what is the Beyonder's other reason for sticking around her? What is his goal here? There's something more to this, and that something more could be very ominous and sinister. He might be a lot more villainous than we know, but it's hard to say right now because we only have a certain amount of context. Excuse me. But this dude is practically unbeatable. Because he's omniscient, he's omnipresent, he knows all, he sees all. He can't be hit. He can erase existence with the snap of a finger. It's like, how do you even fight someone like that? He has been practically always a god. And he seems pretty fickle. Like, he's going to change his mind on a dime. And look good while doing it, but that's not the point. How do you even begin to fight someone like this? I genuinely have no clue. It just seems like he's too powerful. And I'm not necessarily saying this is like a major detriment to the series, because it's going to depend on where this goes and all. And it's very clearly going to go somewhere. But it's like, there is kind of that little hesitation. Because it's like, you don't want this. You might think you do, but you don't. You don't want a villain who is literally all-powerful. Because you want to believe that the hero can defeat them. You want to see it as like, oh, the odds are against the hero, but they still overcome those odds and are able to find a way to defeat the villain. That's what you want to see. You don't want to see a villain who is literally all-powerful, because then nothing that the hero can do would realistically be able to defeat the villain. And anything that they give to the hero to do would be just inconceivable. It wouldn't work. Especially with this character literally knowing all. He'd be able to know any plan Lunella could come up with. And stop it with the snap of a finger. She wouldn't be able to come up with literally anything. So if they made her come up with something to stop him, it would literally be unbelievable. It would be impossible to actually work. But the reason why I'm holding out on really like saying that this is too much as a villain for a character like Moon Girl or a series like this, because remember, Moon Girl doesn't actually have powers or anything. She's just super smart and has some high-tech gear. But I'm holding off because, one, like I said, he doesn't come across as a villain, per se. He's just a mischievous trickster. But also, two, there's more to him that we're not getting info on right now. There's going to have to be like more info revealed before we can really say where this is going. Because in this episode, Lunella, I guess you could say, quote-unquote, defeats the Beyonder by changing his mind. She convinces him to give humanity another chance, and he does, and it works. Even though they didn't win, he gives them humanity another chance because of what they managed to do, nonetheless. It seems to be the only way to actually fight him. And I don't know where that's going. I genuinely do not know. But this is fascinating because this changes a lot of this series, and that accounts for stuff before too, because again, we've heard him literally giving backstory to all these villains and stuff. I think he was even credited in the credits as like backstory man, which I thought was just a funny joke and everything for a narration situation. But in reality, it was set up for this character to come in. And it's like, yeah, that's insane. That's wild. On top of that, obviously, this episode had the call-outs to Wakanda and all. And that's really cool. Like, I was talking about how I wanted to see more of that kind of stuff in this series. Like, to call out to stuff from like, the greater Marvel universe. And not only is Wakanda mentioned and everything, and they do the Wakanda Forever, mind is blanking, salute, I guess you'd call that. But they also mention the Wakandan Center. That, and again, I believe that's the one. Also, dog might start barking in a second, but the one that T'Challa built after the events of the Black Panther movie. At least that's what it sounded like to me. And if so, that's really cool. That's really interesting. Just a overall reference I was not expecting. She'll be done in a minute. But yeah, this was wild. On top of that, this episode also had a core message to it, to take other people seriously, even if they don't seem to be the most serious or smart or whatnot individual. Don't just judge them based on, you know, narrow-minded assumptions about them. And give them a chance to prove themselves. Actually, you know, take people seriously. And respect them. This is all stuff that Lunella didn't do. She was treating Eduardo basically like a leper. She didn't even want to be around him, much less let him help her on the science fair project. And so it ended up upsetting him, rightly so, and almost cost humanity. Mind you, that's obviously an exaggerated set of stakes for a situation like this, but, you know. Yeah, and in the end, she had to learn to actually, you know, give him a chance. He might not be as bad as you assume right off the gate. And he ended up helping, and it saved humanity. All because Lunella gave him the opportunity, and she apologized, and she started, you know, treating him like a person and not as a plague or something. It's definitely a lesson a lot of people need to learn, and it's a great lesson for a series like this as well. People need to be treated with respect, even if they're different than you, even if you don't automatically see them as on your level. You need to throw out narrow-minded assumptions like that. You need to throw out, honestly, insulting ideas like that. Because that's just terrible. Like, I was getting actually angry at Lunella in this episode. She was actually starting to piss me off, if I'm being honest. Because it's like, yes, like I said, throughout the series so far, we had seen Eduardo through her eyes, through her perspective. And he'd seen maybe a little annoying and a little much. Like, kind of a bit of a jerk even at times. But we need to stop thinking like that. Everybody deserves a chance to prove themselves. If they waste that chance, and if they prove themselves to be bad, that's one thing. But they deserve a chance. And she wasn't even giving that to Eduardo. I was getting upset. She was... Honestly, for the little that he's actually done, she's been treating him like shit. It's like he hasn't even been like a bully or anything. It's just... I just don't get how people can treat others like that. It's like, I get that she really wanted this prize. I get that science is a big deal for her. But you don't treat people like that. And so it's good that she did see her wrong and did apologize. Mind you, she shouldn't have had to be faced with the threat of human extinction to reach that conclusion. That shouldn't have been necessary. And I could see some people being upset that that's the only reason she did apologize. But it was very clear that she felt guilty, and it was very clear that she did mean it. It wasn't just because of the extinction factor. She very clearly meant it, luckily. But I can still see why some people would still find it upsetting. That it took that much to get through to her. But she did make up for it, and she even accepted in the end that they didn't win. She accepted the runner-up. And I like also, by the way, that like she and Eduardo both said, it's like, oh, I've never gotten runner-up before. But the way they said it, like, and their perspectives on it meant two completely different things. Like, Lunella's was slight disappointment, but acceptance. She's always number one. She's always the big science kid. So for her to get runner-up is something that she's just never had to deal with, and something that is a kind of humbling experience for her. Well, Eduardo has never been on that level. He's not the smartest kid. He's not. I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that in just a way he'd even acknowledge. And so it's like he never even imagined he could get that high. So him winning runner-up is basically like a dream come true for him. Like he would probably take that medal and frame it. It means a lot for him to have reached even that. And it's such a different perspective than Lunella has. And it's really cool to see, just even through like a subtle dialogue and all, what that kind of means to two different people who have had their experiences and everything work from two completely different perspectives. It's like that's really cool to see. Really cool to see. Obviously the Beyonder song was fabulous. Obviously the Beyonder was fabulous. Lawrence Fishburne, I've seen in a lot of things, but his voice acting in this is very different. Like, when I think of Lawrence Fishburne, I think of him almost as stoic. As this stoic, cool-headed type of character who sometimes gets a little more emotionally driven and aggro at times. I do tend to think of movies like 21, even though there is unfortunate issues with that now because of Kevin Spacey. But I do tend to think of that, and that's one of the roles that comes to mind when I think of Lawrence Fishburne. And so hearing him voice the Beyonder in this, it's so different than what I think of with him. And he's so good at it. It's so good. Like, he plays this character to perfection. And obviously we've seen characters like this in many shows. You could you could compare him to Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls. You could compare him to Discord from My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Just the chaotic type of trickster character with godlike energy and powers. Obviously not exactly the same motivations and ideas and powers as Bill or Discord, but definitely within that same kind of character realm. Though much more fabulous than either of the other two. Like, aggressively fabulous. Like, this dude would actually weaponize fabulosity. And probably take Casey along, too, because she would make him even more fabulous. Because it's Casey. As much as I would love to see more of him right away, I think we need to pull back on him for now and maybe bring him back for the finale of the season. Because having him consistently be here at this point, outside of just doing the narrations for the villains, it would feel like a little too much. We need him to not be a common, everyday character right now. He needs to be built up before he can take on a more common, a more consistent role. We need to have a lot more inconsistent appearances first. That's my view on it anyway, especially considering his godlike powers. But yeah, I'm very excited for what this series is going to have in store for us, like more so than ever. Because episodes like this really change the fabric of the show. The trajectory did a flip basically with this episode, and I feel like it's gonna continue being more on this level now, and I hope it's gonna continue to be more on this level now, because this is the kind of shit I want to see. This is the kind of shit that I think is going to propel this series. I've been talking about how I believe that this series is going to get a lot more serious, is going to start being more story focused, and we're starting to see the hints at that for sure. There's a lot of possibilities that this kind of introduction opens up, and I'm very excited. Like this could be really damn good, on the level of something like Ghost of Molly McGee or Amphibia. Maybe not quite as high as Owl House at the moment. It would have a lot of work to get that high, but I could see it being on more of the level of Amphibia or Ghost of Molly McGee, one of those shows. We'll just have to see. Either way, tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this episode of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur? And for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.